Thank you for staying with us on the AM show. It's time for us to dig into our big stories, and we start with quite a number of them. We're going to be talking about a host of issues with our guests. I'll be introducing them to you shortly. So we have joining us in the studio, let me just get it, Dr. Kingsley Nyarko, who is Member of Parliament for Kwadaso. He is in the studio here with us. Doc, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Ben. How are you doing?
I'm well. I also nearly said Dr. Rockson-Nelson Dafeamekpor. Maybe I'm speaking into his future. Rockson-Nelson Dafeamekpor is Member of Parliament for South Dayi. He's also a member of the the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament. Rockson, thank you for
And also Public Accounts.
And Public Accounts.
And also Standing Orders Committee.
Right. I also know you are a member of some committees of Parliament. Every member of Parliament must be on some committee.
Poverty Reduction Strategy Committee.
Did you say education?
Education.
Okay.
Poverty Reduction Strategy Committee and Special Budget.
Asking how much poverty is reduced.
So these are the guests joining us. But first of all, we'll be looking at the matter of the office of the Special Prosecutor. And we're going to have an interaction with lawyer Bobby Banson on that matter. I'll come to my guests in the studio as well for them to give their takes on that all-important matter. But let me say a very good morning to lawyer Bobby Banson. Bobby Banson, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, sir, and good morning to Senior Dafeamekpor. He's left the bar for us.
Oh, Bobby, hey, you are prospering at the bar.
Oh, Senior, we're following you small.
Yes.
And then he ran away and left you.
And that's why I've paved the way for you now. And you are flourishing.
Ayo, so good to have you, but please drop the sir. Why? It makes me feel a bit. I think we've gone beyond sir for now, Bobby. Anyway, so let's get into the meat of the matter. Interesting developments as far as this, High Court ruling is concerned. And yesterday, the Office of the Special Prosecutor took to social media in a hot banter with a few people. But the point to be made is that we're looking at the assets of Kwejo Uswefrie, aka Sir John. He has passed on to glory, but his assets are still, mired in some sort of controversy, especially those to do with the Achimota Forest, the Ramsar site, and all of that. And just to give a bit of a background, there had been a freeze imposed on these controversial assets, or all the assets, so to speak. The High Court has given the ruling that no, that freeze is not going to continue. And now it's become a thorny matter because the Special Prosecutor, Kisi Ejabeng, is saying it was an error that the Justice of the Court ruled, because freezing assets and confiscating assets are two wholly different things. So, Bobby, let's start the conversation from there. I know it will be tricky for you to say the Justice of the Court was in error, but do explain for us freezing assets versus confiscating assets. What are the core differences?
For me, it's an academic issue. The temptation is for the discussion to be drawn towards that side. To be frank, to be very honest with you, I do not think that was the focus of the judges. I have not seen a copy of her ruling. But listening to the reportage, I do not think that was the focus of the argument.
There definitely are other angles, but you can go to what you think is the focus then.
Yeah, no, if you look at the OSP Act, the means by which the assets of a person who is suspected to have acquired them unlawfully within the ambit or the jurisdiction or the scope of duty of the OSP could either be frozen under Section 32, I believe, or 38, mostly, one of them. Neither Section 32 or 38 uses the word confiscation. I stand to be corrected.
Right.
They both use the word freezing. Mm-hmm. And so to contend that, okay, there's a difference between confiscation and freezing, in the context of the application that was before the court,
right,
I think is quite a red herring.
So,
in my humble opinion, again,
let's just do this. So, confiscation does not exist technically in that sense.
No,
is it relevant?
exists.
Is it relevant to these aspects, these articles you are quoting, or is it generally in the law?
No, confiscation exists. The state has the right to confiscate assets that were acquired unlawfully. So if you look at, I believe it should be, for example, if somebody is found guilty of peddling in drugs or that narcotics, and then they are able to prove that you have acquired some assets from the revenue from those narcotics trade. After you have been found guilty, one of the orders a court can make is that the assets that you have acquired from those illegal activities should be confiscated to the state.
Right. But Bobby, so I get the concept of confiscation generally in the law. I was just wondering whether you were speaking specific to the relevant articles, 32 and I think 38 that you were mentioning. That's why I was asking whether you were speaking specific to those.
So, yes. Yes. So my opening remarks were specific to the sections in the OSP Act that gives the special prosecutor the right to go to court to apply for a confirmation of any freezing orders that the special prosecutor has done. And that is why I'm saying that without prejudice to the processes that were filed before the court, if you look at sections 32 and 38, they don't use the word confiscation. Because confiscation, from my understanding, is a final order that is made after the accused person has been found guilty of an offense. But if you are still investigating, it cannot be an issue of confiscation. And it's not only the Special Prosecutors Act that has that provision. I believe the IOCO, the Enabling Act of Economic and Organized Crime, also has a similar thing, which we have seen being done a lot, especially with anti-money laundering fights. They do it a lot.
Is that to suggest, Bobby, that when the special prosecutor then suggests that he wasn't referring to a confiscation but a freezing, it is fundamentally flawed, it is erroneous?
Well, like I said, I have not seen a copy of the judge's ruling. I will not go to the extent of saying that it is fundamentally flawed. I'm only stating my understanding of section 32 and 38, unless his position is that the judge relied on another section of the OSP Act, which mentioned confiscation. I have not seen that yet.
Okay.
And so to the extent that I know there was an application to confirm a freezing order that has been made by the OSP, I believe that he would either come under 32 or 38.
All right. Let's look at this freezing. What happens in the process? I mean, let's look at the tenure, for example. How long does this usually stand? And now the special prosecutor wanted an extension, and the court did not grant him this. He says he's going to go ahead and continue with investigations and all of that. But what usually is the lifespan of such a freeze? What is expected to be done in the interim when such a freeze is granted? Because initially that was granted and now has been quashed by the High Court. So there are two procedures to adopt. The first procedure under section 32. If the special prosecutor is investigating someone, or not investigating. If the special prosecutor suspects that someone has acquired an asset unlawfully or abused his public office to acquire an asset, the special prosecutor on his own, without a court order, without notice to that person, can freeze the assets of that person. Within 7 days after the special prosecutor has made that freezing order, the special prosecutor must apply to a court for a confirmation of that freezing order. When that freezing order is confirmed by the court, I believe within 60 days or so, the special prosecutor must actually charge the person with an offense. And once you have charged the person, you go back to the court to tell the court that I came for a confirmation of the freezing order. I have actually now gone ahead to charge the person with these offenses. So extend the freezing order for a 2-year period per time, at every point in time.
whilst the prosecution of the substantive offense continues. That is one approach. The second approach under Section 38, I believe, is where the assets are being held by somebody. The special prosecutor wants to investigate. He wants to investigate not the person who holds the assets, but he wants to investigate another person. So, for example, I'm driving a car. The special prosecutor comes to me and says that I am in possession of the car, but the car is not in my name. It is in the name of, let's say, Senior Nelson. But the special prosecutor wants to freeze the car, as in prevent me from driving it. Because I'm the one in possession, the freezing order at first instance will be directed to me, because I'm the one in possession. But I'm not the subject of the investigations. It's Senior Nelson who is the subject of the investigations. In that instance, the special prosecutor has 14 days to apply for a freezing order. So you see, the first instance is if the person who holds the assets is the subject of the investigations.
Right.
The second instance is the person who holds the asset is not the subject of the investigations. Now, in Sir John's case, he's passed and gone. Whilst he was alive, nobody investigated him. He's gone. Now he dies leaving behind a will. The will names an executor or executors. The executors in law are not the owners of the property. They only have an obligation to distribute the property in accordance with the will of the deceased after a court has granted probate.
Right.
And then the beneficiaries of the will, if the executors put in or they execute what we call vesting assent, now become the owners of the property. Now, if you look at Sir John's situation, the special prosecutor cannot investigate the executors. He cannot investigate the beneficiaries for offenses allegedly done by Sir John. Because Sir John is dead, past and gone. You cannot, if my father commits a crime and he dies and he leaves me a house, you cannot come and punish me for the offense that my father committed if you never charged him or punished him at the time of his death. And so if the special prosecutor brought an application to confirm that he wants an order to, for a confirmation order of his freezing order, let me put it that way, then the special prosecutor must indicate who is in possession of that asset and who is the subject matter of the investigations.
And as of now, we do not have people in possession of the assets. We're still at the point where
yes,
executors have to now, because the disbursement has not even been done per the law. So that makes it problematic.
The subject matter of a court dispute, I'm told. The will itself is the subject matter of a court dispute. So who is the subject of your investigations? Is it the deceased?
Right.
Men don't talk, they say. So how are you going to investigate him?
So this creates a very tricky situation because the person in contention who would have been at the center of this has passed. Of course, we have the executors who also have a simple duty of ensuring that the will or the last testament of Sir John is carried out per the guidelines that the law stipulates. And there are the beneficiaries on the other end who for now have been pretty quiet on all of these happenings. But the special prosecutor is saying that, look, the court has misapprehended this, and like we were speaking about earlier, there are different considerations when it comes to confiscation, and that if we leave the process hanging as it is, you remember that the Ghana Integrity Initiative, other civil society groupings and others said, look, OSP, move for the freeze, and he did that. Now he proceeded to do that, and he is indicating that as he continues with his investigations, which he has said he will continue anyway, if this freeze is not in place, it's going to hamper the matter because the assets in question may not be available at the time when his conclusions are, his investigations are concluded. Valid point?
Well, lawyers always say that the justice, okay, so let me put it that way. The courts are not there to fight corruption. Judges do not fight corruption. it is the responsibility of the Attorney General, IOCO, Special Prosecutor, or any other agency set up by law. What the courts are there to do is to dispense justice. And justice is not dispensed according to public opinion, or perception, or suspicion, or emotions. Justice is dispensed in accordance with statute, well-defined practice, and case law. And so if the special prosecutor is of the opinion that Sir John has acquired these assets, or the Ghana Integrity Initiative is of the opinion that the late Sir John has acquired assets unlawfully, the next question you must ask yourself, what is the procedure to establish this? If you don't follow the procedure, you may have all the evidence. You will not have your day in court.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Right.
And so it's not a matter of public perception. And that is why I found, I don't know if you come to that part, I find that part of his press release saying that if it's allowed to stand, it will be a fight, or there was a part that suggests
right.
that
we can get the statement from the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Let me just look for it here. But I see the part you're referencing where he talks about what it would mean for the fight against corruption. So I found it on my. He talks about that if this decision is left to stand, the Republic will lose the fight against corruption in unimaginable ways. I think that's what you're referencing, right?
Yes, that is what it's. I find that part of his release quite, or it could have been avoided. The reason being that you see that part of his statement has the potential of crippling public sentiment negatively against the bench, because you are suggesting that judges have made, or the judge has delivered a ruling that will embolden people to be corrupt.
But judges can err. Judges can err. In the United States, we have a case, a 10-year-old and all of judges err. Sometimes it takes decades to get the right thing done.
And so if you have exercised your right to appeal, issuing such statements is likely to prejudice the outcome of the appeal.
Okay, so to wrap the conversation, Bobby Banson, so that brings me to my next point, and I just want you to look at a few issues. What does this mean? Is it a stab in the back as far as the fight against corruption is concerned? This ruling, what does it mean? Because, we've all spoken about the Office of the Special Prosecutor. We've moved from Martin Amidu to Kisia Jabeng, and you know that the entire situation. Is this a stab in the back of the fight against corruption, as he suggests? And is this going to unnecessarily antagonize the bench? Because the special prosecutor must work with the bench to achieve the ends that he desires. Just answer these two briefly, succinctly for me.
I don't see it as a stab in the back. The judges are there to interpret and apply the law passed by legislature. So if you apply a procedure that the judge, remember the judge didn't make a statement that Sir John acquired the thing lawfully. The merits of the or the investigations was not the subject matter of the decision of the court. The court said, I decline, or you have not invoked my jurisdiction properly because you have not adopted the right procedure. If you go and adopt the right procedure, we can go through or carry on with your process. But as it stands now, you have not adopted the right procedure. I do not think it's a stab in the back. Like I said, justice is dispensed in accordance with statute, case law, and practice and procedure. So if the judge is of the opinion, she may be right or she may be wrong, that you have adopted the wrong procedure, your right to appeal is there.
And he has triggered that. He has triggered that.
And then do you feel?
Yeah, the second part of the question. I'm sorry, I'm pushing you a bit, but we're pressed for time. Pardon me. Do you feel this is going to create any frostiness as far as the OSP and the bench is concerned? Because they must work hand in hand.
Yes, I don't think so. I mean, Senior Kingsley Nyarko is a well-established professional. I don't think he will personalize this, and for sure the judges do not personalize such cases. That is their opinion on the law. That is how they want to apply it. If you disagree, you go on appeal. Remember, Attorney General loses cases and wins cases, just like every lawyer. So you do not personalize a case or the outcome of a case because it didn't go in your favor. I'm sure that if he pursues the appeal, and the appellate court is convinced with his argument, they will grant it. If the other side, because it must be on notice, is dissatisfied with the outcome of the court, the decision of the Court of Appeal, they also have a right of appeal to the Supreme Court until it's finally determined. So I don't think that it has any potential of mind the relationship between the OSP's office and the court. They work hand in hand, and there's nothing personal about this.
Bobby, thank you so much for your illuminating thoughts. Always refreshing to have you. We're grateful for your time. Thank you. That is lawyer Bobby Benson, a lawyer and, of course, a lecturer as well. Let me come into the studio now on that same matter as we proceed with other matters, a basket of matters we're going to be discussing. I'll start with you, Rockson. You're a lawyer.
Yes.
Reflecting on what has happened, what Kissy Ajabing, so the rhetoric, I don't need to go over the entire bit.
Yes.
And the reactions of Bobby Benson. What are your quick reflections?
I totally agree with Benson in respect of the unkind reactions by the OSP. In respect of the.
Did he overshoot it?
I think so. I think if I had said this, I would have come under a barrage of attacks for attacking the judiciary. And he being the special prosecutor. And indeed, the act that sets the institution up gives him the right of appeal. And the right of appeal in this matter is also constitutionally guaranteed. So I don't see why he said, he made the kind of comment he made in the statement in the manner that he did.
Do you feel he was overcome by emotion? He allowed emotion
yes, I
to
think,
get him?
like Bobby said, he's personalized the issue. And clearly, you see, if you are investigating crime, the suspects ought to be given a hearing.
Exactly.
That's the right under law. Now you
and in our jurisdiction, unlike in other jurisdictions, it is innocent until proven guilty.
But the fundamental point I want to make is that when you say you are investigating a crime and you have suspects, you have to give them the right of hearing. That is why we take caution statement and charge statement. It's not for nothing that statements are taken from the suspects. And when you establish a prima facie determination, then you charge them and you now take what we call charge statement. How is he going to do this to Sir John? How are you going to give a hearing to Sir John who is gone? In any case, I want to understand what the Office of the Special Prosecutor is doing. Is he investigating the estate of Sir John, which is an entity under law? We need to understand that. If he's investigating the estate, he should come clear that perhaps the estate has engaged in some crime.
If you look at the directives, on May 20, 2022, the Office of the Special Prosecutor directed the freezing of the estate of the late Mr. Efriye. So it's a two-pronged affair. Who was popularly known as Sir John. The offences were in respect of an alleged improper and unlawful acquisition of state property at the Achimota Forest Enclave and the Ramsar
This is where the problem is for me as a practitioner. Are you accusing the estate of Sir John for fraudulently acquiring those properties? Or you are accusing the diseased Sir John?
If you and that is the point that Bobby Benson.
Yeah, exactly. And the law, when you do that, you are running yourself into problems. Then two, you see, the OSP Act provides for a freezing order and an order for confiscation. And these terms are clearly defined in the law. A freezing order is a temporary order.
Of course,
it's a temporary seizure.
You can renew,
exactly.
but it can't be
it's a temporary seizure. It lasts for 12 months, according to Section 43 or so. Now, you confiscate a property when there's a closure. When the property is tainted, there's closure to the matter. So you go back to court to now convert a seizure order to a confiscated order or a confiscation order. So that's about that. But I think that this matter, we should all proceed very carefully. Otherwise, tomorrow we'll have busybodies, state institutions with prosecutorial powers going after dead people. Our laws are very clear. Our jurisprudence in criminal matters are very clear. You don't investigate dead people. Yes, you cannot investigate a dead person, because when you claim to investigate a dead person, you must give the person a hearing. The person cannot be heard.
Audi alteram part.
Yes. So I don't know how he's going to achieve that, unless it's an exercise in futility.
So in his shoes, just to wrap the conversation on this, and also to give Dr. Kingsley a bit of a bite on that, in case he has any thoughts on that. In the shoes of the special prosecutor, what would you be doing now?
I think he should abandon the matter.
He should abandon the
Yes, clearly.
But this is a core matter of interest. You sat here on this show. Relax.
No, yes.
You sat here on this show and spoke about Sir John and this and that.
Yes, but the estate.
And now you're saying you should abandon.
But the estate has not committed a crime. There's only a suspicion.
Right.
The estate has not committed a crime.
So legally speaking, how do you bring closure to a matter like this?
What the state can do is to institute a civil action against the estate.
Right.
And say that the supposed clauses, as they are in Sir John's will, devising certain properties, including portions of the Achimota forest, are not his personal property. You can contest that. And therefore, he cannot, as it were, will it to his benefactors under his will. You can contest the right of him having acquired those properties as an individual, and which, if the court agrees with you, will not form part of his estate for purposes of disposition. But if you want to go into whether or not he committed a crime in acquiring those properties, it's a journey to nowhere. It's a journey to nowhere. The state can contest that the property that has supposedly been devised in the will of Sir John does not belong to him. And you cannot give out what you don't have. I have done cases where properties were bequeathed by testators, and it turned out that it was a family property. So the court decreed that those properties be taken out of the will of the testator. We do that all the time. Because you can only give what you have to another. You can only devise what you have to another.
Right.
And wills only come into effect after your death.
Okay, so it is clear for you,
Yes.
you feel the OSP should abandon this?
Yes.
They should just let go?
Yes.
So the investigations that he speaks of, he should let that go as well?
Of course. But the point I'm making is that, what are you investigating?
Point made.
Yes.
Let me come to Dr. Nyarko. Maybe your quick thoughts on this. You are not a lawyer.
I'm not a lawyer.
You're an academic, but what is your thinking on this?
Yeah, so thanks, Ben. Good morning to your cherished viewers. My constituents from Kwadaso, my good friend, Rockson. So for me, remember, I sat on the show and I said that if possible, there should be investigations into the alleged properties acquired by Sir John, and if it is established that any of them was illegally acquired, then the state can go into it. That was a point I made, and I think I still stand.
You stick to it.
Yeah, but
and I do recall that you made that point.
Yeah, what I want to also establish is that there has not been there's not been corruption unraveled in this matter. It is alleged. That is why, for me, we need to go into it. So if the special prosecutor sees that what happened at court yesterday means that the fight against corruption is going
to be, in his words, affected in unimaginable ways.
He's wrong.
He's wrong. The special prosecutor is wrong.
Because no corruption has been unearthed now. It's an allegation.
But it's problematic. The Achimota forest is not personal property. Willing such property, from the Ramsar side, from Achimota itself, is problematic, isn't it?
No, it's a civil wrong.
It says I'm not a lawyer, but the point is that you need to establish there should be a prima facie case that this case is saddled with corruption, and the court is not trying to express justice. If not been able to establish that, you don't come to that conclusion. And again, if you see, freezing of assets, assets freezing is a temporary or interlocutory injunction against a defendant for that defendant not distributing assets, okay? So the point is that, who is the defendant in this case? Okay, so is the matter even before the courts? What I do recall is that he issued a directive that his assets should be frozen. So is the case before the court? Is there a defendant to it? So if there's no defendant to, if there's the matter proper is not before the courts, why should you even apply for, his assets to be, the freezing of the assets
in
be
this,
confirmed.
in this case, a suspect.
Right.
Or you
To be
are
confirmed.
charged.
So for me, he is proceeding wrongly in this matter.
The OSP is proceeding wrongly.
Yes, and he is arriving at a very predetermined wrong conclusion, indicting the bench, which for me is unfair. He has to be very careful.
Don't you think it's more of his zealousness when it comes to the fight against corruption?
If zealousness doesn't mean that you need to undermine procedure. Or your opinion shouldn't be the overriding opinion. You don't do that. Let us allow procedures, to work. I support the fight against corruption, but you cannot fight corruption without having a justified or strong foundation to stand on. So, you see, my former colleague at the University of Ghana, he has to do things right and stop putting the impression that the fight against corruption is a mirage. It's not going to go nowhere. I think I disagree with him on that score. He is saying he's going to file for an appeal, and I support that. But from the foundation, I don't think he has strong legs to stand on in this particular matter. For me, if the investigations that he is conducting have been done and concluded with evidence, that is when you can go to court and fight against the estate of Sir John.
All right.
You've not done with the investigations, and you are coming out with conclusions. I think
Dr. Kingsley Nyarko stating that Kissy Ajabing has to tread cautiously because in this instance he has no legs to stand on. So pretty slippery slope, at least per my panel. Dr. Nyarko, who says he has no legs to stand on. Rockson-Nelson Dafeamekpor, who says in terms of procedure there may be some bits left in there, and Bobby Banton as well. Let's see how things go as the special prosecutor continues with his investigations. But gentlemen, let's talk money matters. Maybe some would go back to corruption, but let's focus on the IMF before we even talk labor. The IMF is in town, and that can only mean one thing. We're looking for a program. We're seeking some $1.5 billion to do so many things, part of it to pay our debt, give us some breathing space when it comes to our economy, and deal with other issues. Engagements commencing yesterday at the same time that Labour was also agitating. We'll get to that like I intimated. We also know of the engagements at Pediase, to sort of take stock of where we find ourselves in terms of our economic outlook, and take stock of programs and chart a path for growth. The Finance Committee of Parliament has been meeting on this matter, and there have been engagements from both the minority and the majority sides. I'll start with you, Roxon. So far, looking at the processes and the talk of transparency so that we can have the real facts and nothing but the facts and deal with the issues, because it's said that if you are sick and you pretend you are not, the doctor cannot, or if you do not tell the doctor what your sickness is,
your malady is,
there will be no proper diagnosis.
Yes.
Your take on that?
Yes, quickly, I I'm wondering what they'll go to Pedrasi to do. They were in Pedrasi in January. They came out to say that the economy was robust, the economy was in good shape, the economy was healthy, the economy was moving in the right direction with all the appropriate indicators. 5 months down the line, the economy is in a decline. The economy needs to be resuscitated. We have to go back to IMF. Now, for the past 2 years, the IMF alone gave us in excess of $2 billion to do things in our economy by way of the COVID, to fight COVID and other things. If $2 billion is not able to help us, how much will $1.5 billion do?
It depends on the exigencies of the time.
Yes, but what were the exigencies?
We can't get the Eurobonds now.
What were the exigencies?
Our creditors are reluctant to give us money because of the risks inherent in the system.
And yes, and
we need some breathing space.
And because of how large government is and how profligate our expenditure lines are. Let me ask you this. We're giving $2 billion during COVID, within the past 2 years. We haven't built a single hospital with it. We haven't built a single disease control center with it. The only disease control center we built during COVID, we had to call on the public to assist. So you ask yourself, the funds that we've been given, how did we apply it? What exactly are we going to apply this IMF 1.5 billion to?
Okay, so
my understanding, it's a rhetorical question.
Right.
My understanding is that there's a budget deficit.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, the same government.
I just wanted to give us all a full list, so we can deal with it. To address economic challenges, balance of payments.
What does economic challenges mean?
To help the nation access additional financing from third parties, and we know why. Because they are reluctant now, enhance Ghana's financial credibility, and we've already seen some benefits of that.
So we don't have financial credibility.
By merely knocking
so we don't have financial credibility.
The IMF to restore investor confidence, to restore debt sustainability, macroeconomic stability.
Exactly.
I mean, it goes on and on.
So we don't have financial credibility. And two, we were told that government is cutting down its own expenditure lines for 2022 by 30%. I filed a question directed at the Minister of Finance to come and tell Parliament what those 30% expenditure lines mean. What exactly are those expenditure lines? He's not been able to tell us. So when you keep saying that you've reduced your expenditure lines for 2022 by 30%, and yet you are unable to tell the people's elected representative what exactly that 30% constitutes, we have a problem. It means we are still running a top-heavy government. Your expenditure projected of about 140 billion. Okay, you are still running that kind of budget with an expected revenue of about 100 million.
Our budget this for 2022 was 100.5 billion.
100 point what?
5 billion.
It wasn't.
100.5.
It wasn't.
That's correct.
It's 140. It's 140. That's the expenditure.
That is what was
that's expenditure. Yes, that's expenditure. The expected expenditure for 2022.
135 billion.
It's 140 billion.
No, if you add interest payment and amortization, it will go to.
It's 140 billion.
The expenditure.
The expected revenue is about 100 billion.
Yeah, that's what he said. 100.5 billion. That's what he said.
Well, so if we have expected revenue figures of about 100 billion and expenditure lines of about 140 billion, and you are saying you are cutting down on 30% of the expenditure lines, that is bringing you to about 30% of the 140 billion. Mm-hmm. That should bring you to about below 100 billion.
Let's do.
All right. Mm. So you should be within your expenditure lines, but they are not telling us. If government is able to reduce its expenditure lines by 30% of 140 billion, for me, that should come to about 90-something billion. So this talk about budget deficit, if you marry with their own declaration that they are reducing expenditure lines by 30%, I have a problem. Because we shouldn't have a problem if you are able to reduce your expenditure lines by 30%.
So if we're doing 30%, we should be erasing about 42 billion off of
it. Should bring you below 100.
98.5.
It should bring you below 100.
These are projections.
Exactly. But we work with projections. Whatever we are doing, we are not working with exactitudes. We are working with projections. And let me ask government, last year, you projected your revenue projections. You didn't match it. You did revenue of about 70. Why are you projecting from 70 to 100? What is the secret? That's about 30 billion jump. It's too high.
Some have said that it wasn't the word to use, but it wasn't realistic, so to put it. But you also look at our tax component, for example. Year on year, the GRA has been getting,
if you calculate
we've been overshooting our expectations.
No.
By a few billion.
No.
By a few billion.
Yes.
GRA has been getting more than even projected.
No. GRA only exceeded.
By the figures released by the
GRA didn't meet any of its projections except the customs division. Except the customs division. It's actually the customs division that is able to help GRA to meet
overall,
all the other sectors,
in about 2
all
years,
the other sectors.
Correct me if I'm wrong.
All the other sectors, they fell
more than
because of the customs division
for the year.
Because of the ports.
But we don't segregate them like that.
No, they are segregated.
No, I get you. But the point is that overall, the expectation was this. They overshot it. Did they overshoot it or not?
Akakpo. The GRA revenue segments are into about 5 or 6 segments.
I'm not disputing that.
Good.
I'm saying that when you lump them together without any disaggregation, did they overshoot their expectations or not?
Yes, because the customs division performs better. Apart from the customs division, all the other projections, they couldn't meet it. So, if you marry this to the projections from about 70 to 100 billion revenue expectations, it's too big a jump. It's too big a jump. So if the government is willing to actually cut down on projected expenditure by 30%, then they should be within their limits. Reasonable expenditure lines, about 98 billion. Reasonable expenditure projections of about 100 billion. We shouldn't have a problem, but we still have a problem. So it means that there's a disconnect somewhere.
Where is that disconnect?
The disconnection is that government should tell us what constitutes the 30% to be factored into the communication. They are not telling anybody. It is just a policy that they put out there. So I think that the IMF will not be able to help us because...
I think they will not be able to help us.
Yes, because the amount of money we are asking for is woefully inadequate. As a country, we need about 30 billion in the kinds of the crisis we have.
30 billion
$30 billion.
Dollars?
Yes.
I mean, do you realize what you're saying?
I do.
Multiply 30 billion by existing rates.
Yes.
Multiply that by...
Yes. Exactly my
what
point.
the rates are and the expectations in terms of even interest payments.
Exactly
do you realize what you're saying?
Do you know how much we borrowed within the past 5 years?
Over 200 billion.
Dollar equivalent.
Well, would have to do the calculations.
Okay, we borrowed about 8 billion within the past 5 years. 8 billion. Right. All right. Revenue projections has been around 250 billion Ghana cedis within the past 5 years. If you convert it into cedis, it comes to about $40 billion. We still have issues. Our developmental issues. We are having.
So you are speaking of a one-time solution.
A one-time solution.
But the solution to our economic woes is it goes beyond that. Look at
it goes beyond what?
Our industrialization. We have not industrialized. Look at our import-exports.
You see, because
look at our debts.
Yeah.
I've been reading documents in recent times about debts. Is it justice for debt or something of the sort? There are organizations across the world who are saying, look, the West, there are certain things you have to do. Cut down on certain interest rates and all of that when it comes to African countries. China as well, you know. It's wider than you're just saying. We can't have a monetary fix, so to speak, pump in the money, solve the problems.
Because
it doesn't work
because we are not validating the programs we are pumping the monies into. We pump so much money into planting for food and jobs. What is the valuation that we've done? We pumped so much money into one constituency, $1 million. How have you valued that?
Okay, let me get to Dr. Nyarko and find out how they have valued that. The finance ministry, or the finance minister, has been saying that, look, we're going to have this program even, maybe at the earliest, in the first quarter of 2023. By that time, we'll be in, I don't know, pretty dire economic straits, according to what the economists tell us. The IMF is in town. What is your reading of happening so far? How expectant are you that we can get a program, first of all? And are we being candid enough? Because that has also come into question.
Candid in terms of?
Well, the minority has been saying, for example, that, look, when you come, don't massage the figures. And that even in the first day of engagement, look, paint the proper picture so we can diagnose the right solutions to your malaise or your ailment.
Yeah, Ben, but the economic indicators are there for everybody to see, and we have nothing to hide. It is not true that at the beginning of the year, the government has been saying that the economy was robust and all that. We didn't say that. We have admitted, even in 2020 and 2021, that we are going to financial difficulties as a result of the spillover over the twin occurrences, COVID-19 and Ukraine-Russia war, ravaging almost every country in this world. That was why government decided to address these challenges, both in the near term and long term, by instituting interventions to help us out of the woods. Our difficulties as a nation have been structural. We all admit that. So any temporal fix wouldn't help this nation anywhere. So we need to.
So do you agree with a permanent fix, a la what Rockson is saying?
Permanent fix, that is progressive. That is why if you look at the budget, when the NDC sought support from the IMF in April 2015, the $918 million. If you read the report by the executive committee of the IMF, they told them what to do and what not to do. They told them that our issues were structural, and we need to, up domestic revenue. We need to stabilize our banking system. We need to deal with the energy sector crisis and all that, and also our wage bills. These were what the government was told. Luckily for us, we were able to navigate away from the extended credit facility in 2018, and we had in our budget domestic solutions to our problems. Okay, because we all know that our revenues in terms of tax to GDP have been low. We know that direct taxes are low, about 12%, lower than the 20% threshold of the West African Economic Monetary Union. So we decided to introduce the yield levy. We decided to reverse the benchmark values. We introduced a common platform to deal with property tax. We introduced the fees and charges bill, the exemption bill. And the idea was that if we were able to fully implement these interventions, we should rake in much revenue so that we wouldn't even seek intervention from the IMF. We've gone to the IMF about 17 times. But my brother, we still come back to square one. So the most important thing to do is to look at how we can, within our own jurisdiction, raise monies. That has been our focus.
But that hasn't really worked.
It hasn't worked because
from the taxation end, we're overtaxing a small, bracket of people. We also have the other taxes that slap everybody.
Yeah.
Like VAT. But then now we've piled on so many taxes, sanitation, COVID-19 levy. Some have said that is a nuisance right now because, looking at what we've raked in, what the dynamics were, what we delivered to the people, and these taxes are still, all of them. We have the petroleum taxes and all of that. And now even with fuel products, you see the impact that it's having. These have not worked.
Yeah, no. The point is that you are saying that only few of us pay direct taxes. In fact, when it comes to indirect taxes, almost all of us pay.
Right.
Because they are charged on goods and services.
That is
but the issue has to do with the direct taxes. So the yield levy was supposed to cure that to an extent, but it didn't see its proper implementation as a result of fierce opposition by our friends.
It's being implemented now.
I said fully implemented.
But it's being implemented now.
Yes, it is, but not in
from all the indications that we are seeing, it's also not performing.
That was why I'm saying that it was not implemented in its fullest sense, because so many exemptions were brought to the fore. The initial anticipation of about 6 billion was not realized because we brought in so many interventions, and it delayed for about 5 months.
How many interventions were there? There were, so the first was, maybe you can talk about the delay, and then you can also talk about the fact that it was moved by 0.25% from 1.75 to 1.5. What else?
Oh, in addition, you remember remittances were part of the calculation. It was taken out. I'm sure you know that. Vendors were also taken off.
Okay.
Yes.
You are.
And so many other, because the bill came before us, and our friends, I mean, virtually kick against it. That is why we are having, less volumes and value.
So in essence, partly the minority is to blame for.
Largely, not partly. It was a deliberate attempt to frustrate, because their thinking is that if you're able to get in the indirect revenue, probably this country can navigate away from the difficulties we are going through. So they want to...
And that would mean they will not come to power? Likely.
Yes. Okay. So they want to frustrate us so that it will inure to their benefit. Recently, I'm sure you heard one of their key figures saying that they have succeeded in frustrating a government from raising revenue. And for me, that is not the right approach in dealing with our socio-economic issues in this country. And I am always persuaded that if this government is able to lay a fertile foundation, it's not possible that this government will be ruling forever. So a fertile foundation means that it will be easier for the next person or the next administration that takes the realms of governance in this country. So for me, largely, our attempts, even the benchmark values reversed, initially it was 50% on imported goods, remember? And I think 30% on vehicles. We had to compromise because GUTA and AGI had issues. Eventually, it reduced to 30% for goods, imported goods, and 10% for vehicles. So it means that even the volumes and the value will decline. And again, it was implemented 3 months after the budget was implemented. So, and as we speak, the common platform for property tax, that we think that it could help us to rake in much needed revenue, is not even implemented. Yeah, it was yesterday that the exemption bill was laid before the House. Yesterday, I was there when it was laid before the House. The fees and charges review, periodic review for every 5 years. The idea was to make money available to public institutions for them to have IGF to be self-sufficient financially. As we speak, it has not even been dealt with. So these interventions, if we had been able to get the cooperation of our colleagues on the other side and expedite them, I'm sure that we wouldn't have been where we are. I hear my friends always referencing La Côte d'Ivoire. The La Côte d'Ivoire within our sub-region has not sought support from the IMF. It is true, but I have the executive committee's assessment on Côte d'Ivoire, and the report says that for the past 10 years, their economy has been robust. That was why, as we speak, their inflation rate is less. The inflation rate has been less for the past 10 years.
But is that not an indictment on us? When you say for the past 10 years their economy has been robust, your administration has been at the helm of affairs for 5 years.
No, you see, the point I'm making is that they have had a stable macroeconomic outlook for 10 years. We cannot boast of
We've
that
also
legacy.
boasted of saying.
No, I'm saying we cannot boast of that legacy per the macroeconomic indicators that we have. We went to IMF in 2015. It means our economy was not doing well, okay? Check our growth projections from 2014. 2009, the GDP growth in this country in 2008 was 9.2%, okay? The following year, 2009, it dipped to 4.8. 2011 was when we had, the biggest GDP growth because we started exporting oil in commercial quantities of 14%, my brother. Since that time, it started declining, okay? 2.9 in 2015, 3.4 in 2016, so we started, doing well. Then COVID came. So we've not had that stability in terms of growth. And for me, that is a challenge that we need to confront. Okay. So these are some of the issues why we are where we are. And I agree with anybody that will suggest that we need to work in concert, both sides of the divide, to ensure that we deal with the structural issues. Otherwise, you go to IMF today, you come out tomorrow, and you go again when the fundamental structural challenges in our economy is not dealt with. Okay, so I'm hoping that the negotiations, no matter how much money we are going to get, will be just a temporary fix. Okay, but we must look from the near and long term how we can consistently work hard to move this country. And I always believe that from the figures that I've seen between 2017 and 2019, my brother, if these force majeure had not happened, we were on the pathway of sustained socio-economic growth.
Okay, point.
That's it.
Point made.
And he said something about, and I agree
quickly
with
on that.
I'll
give you 30 seconds
see,
on that.
Our revenue, 2020, 2021, we were able to go beyond our target. Partly because of the interoperability, the paperless intervention at the port got us additional revenue. So we went beyond that. But my brother, the fact that you've exceeded your targeted revenue doesn't mean that you have monies that will face all your problems. It's a target, and we've gone beyond that. That margin, okay, could be used to offset your increased expenditure. That is it. It is true that we projected expenditure for 2022, 135 billion. If you add interest payment and amortization, we are talking about 145 billion. We have revenue projection of 100.5 billion, as we did say. The gap is about 45 billion. It is huge enough.
Just about 40 billion.
We are not even getting the needed revenue to be able to deal with what we have even projected as a result of deep business activities and all that. Okay, so for me, I'm hoping
in resolving this problem, I feel the other part of it. I'll give you a minute to rebut. No. I'll give you.
It said,
Rockson,
my brother.
Rockson, hold on for me, please.
Yes.
I moderate this.
Yes,
we don't have infinite time. We have finite time.
Yes, but
so when I say
time to say a lot of things,
no, but I give you
against the minority.
I'll give you a minute and a half. But I also wanted to make this point. When we, as a country, for both of you, because you belong to different sides of the divide, as a country, if we're constantly having budgets that are tied to the apron strings of the West and Bretton Woods institutions, and you can't even facilitate your own budget, and you always leave a deficit, we'll always end up in the place. I don't get it. NP and NDC.
No. In 2016, we funded our budget solely from our domestic sources. Check 2016, before we left office. So they ought to have continued.
It's been a trend throughout.
No, I am saying the breakthrough came.
No,
2016. Doc, these are facts. Check.
$18 million.
2016, we funded our budget solely from domestic sources. Check. Now, he says that the minority deliberately frustrated e-levy. And they keep singing this song. And such a tragedy that when the minority suggested, led by the minority leader, that e-levy should be 1% instead of 1.5%, and they rejected it, how do they expect us to feel? How does that constitute?
Was it about your feelings or the general good of the country?
No, but I am asking him. You sit here and say we deliberately. You brought a proposal. It is only a proposal. As a parliament, we have the right to make an input. We made an input. Hold on. We made an input. You rejected it. And then you say that we deliberately. When you decided for 5 months to keep to a single position of 1.75, you don't want to come down an inch.
That offer came from
when you were speaking.
But you said
when you were speaking,
you remove him.
When you were speaking,
so you withdrew.
When you were speaking, I was quiet.
You didn't propose
I was quiet.
Who proposed it?
Again, another fallacy is that
rejected it.
Another fallacy is that because e-levy, the passage of e-levy was delayed. Even if e-levy had been passed 31st December 2021, it would have taken them 3 months to implement it. We passed e-levy 29th March 2022. How long did it take them to implement it?
Stop doing Momo. You stopped because he think government.
Please, let's. No, you have made some.
These people. They stop.
You said
and this is that they don't do Momo again because they know that.
Dr. Nyarko, stop.
No, hold on.
They don't do Momo.
This is an interesting. You're saying NDC people are no longer doing Momo because government will get the e-levy.
Yes.
Hold on.
They are no longer doing Momo, so that government will not get.
Yeah, most of them.
But you just said
most of them
when he said he was going to check from his phone, his Momo, now you're saying
now he says most of them.
Let us see.
I'll give it to you. I do Momo. You can't be.
This is interesting.
You can't be managing. There's no way any MP can manage his constituency without doing Momo. You won't survive.
They don't do it.
So we do Momo. We are compelled to do Momo.
Show the example.
Oh, I'll show you to you. But I haven't finished. We are disrupting.
All right. So just wrap up in 30
Hold on.
seconds, I beg you.
This is my Momo. See the Momo payment.
I don't need to see. You can show you can show it to your colleagues. So I think it's for
stop,
you. Stop
the Rosa argument that NDC people have stopped doing Momo. We still do Momo.
Right. Okay.
But the point I want to make is that it is also not correct that because e-levy delayed, that is why government is in crisis. Government came here in March to say the following things. And give me 1 minute to say the following things to us. He says, he addressed the country in March. He has this to say. The finance minister says, however, 3 things that we did not and could not predict hit us. Then he goes on to say that by April 2019, we had successfully completed that 4-year IMF program. We did so and more by achieving an annual average real GDP growth of 7% between 2017 and 2019 from a 3.4% in 2016. 2, maintaining a fiscal deficit below 5% of GDP for 3 consecutive years. 3, maintaining a positive primary balance for 3 consecutive years, which put our debt on a sustainable path. 4, lowering lending rates by over 10 percentage points. 5, restructuring the banking sector, all that.
Okay,
6,
I think your point is made.
Yes, because if you told the nation this in March, that the economy is healthy, what did you? He was quoting what?
2017, 2019.
You came to tell the country this in March, that you are not in crisis.
He was quoting figures from 2020.
I am saying did you read your finance minister?
No, he said.
Yes, and I'm saying the finance minister is telling.
Was strong.
Mr. Nyarko, Dr. Nyarko, please. So I'm saying that in March, the finance minister came to tell the nation this, that we are healthy because of all that.
He didn't say that.
What did he say?
He didn't say that. He said.
What did he say?
He said by 2019 we had increased.
Did you read
the
things? Did you read the things? It's 14 points. Dr. Nyarko, go back and read this.
But I really understand it. He understands.
Yes, and I'm saying You are saying that the economy is not in crisis because you have achieved the following.
No, that's not what he meant.
So what did he mean?
He said that in
Even if the picture wasn't, what did he mean? Gentlemen, and let's
what did he mean?
He didn't say that.
Now you want to
hold on.
You want to explain what the finance minister clearly
It is clear.
14 points.
It is clear.
14 percentage points.
It is clear.
All right. So even if the picture wasn't it was clear that.
But let me finish. I'm rebutting.
Yeah,
I'm telling him that his finance minister said in March that the economy is healthy.
He didn't say that.
He said 14 points.
We do know.
Okay.
We do know that.
He said he won't go to IMF because we are healthy. Didn't he say that?
Yes, he did.
Then additionally,
because of what he had done.
No, he says the fundamentals are strong. We are robust. We won't go to IMF.
Shall we proceed with the conversation, or do we have to?
Dr. Nyarko,
do we have to turn your microphones off?
Dr. Nyarko,
please.
Just hold it there.
Be calm this morning.
The vice president tomorrow. The vice president.
No.
You've had enough.
No, I haven't.
The vice president tomorrow will also be sharing his thoughts on why we're going the way of the IMF. It would be interesting to find out what he has to say. But on the labor front,
Akakpo,
a number of institutions, labor unions have, unless you don't want to talk about the labor issues, a number of labor unions have been up in arms, and now we know, as of today, the Senior Staff Association, Universities of Ghana, are also declaring an indefinite strike. We've heard from the Ghana Registered Midwives Association. We've heard from different groupings, the teacher unions. Yesterday, another meeting that ended in naught, zilch, zero. What is the way forward? I would like us to box in that conversation. I had an interaction earlier with one of the university lecturers, Dr. Kwame Asante, and he says government has not been proactive, that you've not done the right things, basically. I don't want to misquote him, but that you've sat down, waited for a festering problem or a festering sore to become gangrenous, and now you're trying to solve it. It becomes much worse of a problem. Let's put that side by side with the issue of that the NDC is raising of a suspicion that the Ghana card is going to be used to register for election 2024. How much truth is there in that, especially knowing that a lot of people have not been able to register for the Ghana card, people who put in the application a long time ago. My own mother still doesn't have her Ghana card through no fault of hers, and I know so many people like that. If that were to get to that point, what would happen? So these two issues, I'll start with you, Doc.
Yeah, so, Ben. Yeah.
So let's do about 3.5 minutes for each of you, and then we'll wrap the conversation.
Yeah, so the labor front is turbulent now as a result of the obvious hardships Ghanaians are going through. And for some of us, we feel the pain of the Ghanaians. I think all of us are, in one way or the other, are affected by the hikes in prices of goods and services. We all feel it. You know what I mean? No matter how much you earn, the impact is still there. It's true that some will bear the brunt more than others, but in one way or the other, we are all going through it. And I think that government also being responsive to the plight of the citizenry is also looking at how to mitigate the pains and the sufferings. Government has taken some steps in containing expenditure on her side. And in so doing, recently the Statistical Service reported that the 30% cut in KPIs is also affecting development in some areas, which is obvious. So I think that government should find out or see to addressing the pains. The concerns in terms of the need for the cost of living allowance, for me, justified. The COLA is justified. But the times too, when government is in negotiations with IMF, for me, I will ask and plead with Labour to exercise some form of restraint.
But they say they've tightened their belts to the point where, their belts have torn.
Let us see to the end of the negotiations, okay? And I'm sure that after the negotiations, because you see, if you're on strike right now and something positive comes out of the negotiations to your benefit, what will have lost cannot be regained. So why don't you wait till this is done? whilst negotiations are going on.
They say this is just another trick, that this is always the cycle. Oh, cease your strike so that we can have negotiations, and then we're back to zero. And they're saying this time they will not do that.
I've established the need for something to be done, and I've been pushing for it, but in these times when government, so the point is that, you see, if government decides to give something now, can government do it right now? That is
because they are on strike.
No, I mean, because of the nature of the economy, and we're going for support. And I'm saying that the negotiations, when they are done, I'm sure government will meet their needs. And we are pleading with government to do something to suit the pains and sufferings of all of us. Okay. So for me, it is a justified demand, but let's look at the approach within the context of the times right now.
So are you in support of their going back to post so they can continue?
That has been my place.
All right, thank you.
You know what I mean?
Let's do the Ghana card.
So for me, it will be all right.
It will be
all right to deny.
It will be okay.
It will be unright. It will be
unright. Okay, wrong.
To deny people opportunity to exercise their legitimate obligation in terms of franchise when the fault is from the system. I'm making this point because if people don't have it, and it's not through no fault of theirs, and as a result of that, if it's even true that the Ghana card will be the sole requisite for exercising your franchise, then I think that it will be unfair to such persons. So we need to get things right. If we are going to use the Ghana card, then it means that all efforts must be made to ensure that, if not all, majority of Ghanaians who are willing and prepared to have the card have it.
Because there's a backlog of people who have registered, gone through all the processes,
everybody,
a year on, 6 months on,
yes,
and all of that still don't have the card.
I think this has to be done before.
Rockson, you have the rest of the time. The rest of the time is yours in 3.5 minutes, and we're gone.
Thank you. On the labor front, the government is suffering what we call crisis of integrity. Integrity because the labor unions are disappointed in the government for broken promises. And so when government gives them assurances now, they don't want to rely on it. And so that's where we are. Now, in respect of the other matter, I think Madame Jean Mensah has come across as a crisis-oriented, crisis-mongering person.
Crisis-mongering person?
Yes. You always want to monger crisis. You came to Parliament just last year and before 2020 elections to say that after the 2020 biometric voters register, you need a new voters register. All you'll be doing will be updating. And indeed, the CI presently in force empowers you to do that. You actually assured Parliament that voter registration will no longer be done on static basis. It will be done on rolling basis. So as and when people attain the age of 18, they can just walk into your office, get registered.
Right.
And not only when there's due time for a public election to be held. Then you rush to Parliament with a proposed CI. In that CI, you seek to jettison the entire tenor of Article 42 of our Constitution. What she's saying by this new proposed CI is that if you are not a possessor of Ghana card, you cannot be registered as a Ghanaian. And let me remind you what Article 42 of the Constitution says. With your permission, let me read. It says every citizen of Ghana of 18 years of age or above and of sound mind has the right to vote and is entitled to be registered as a voter for the purposes of public elections and referenda. She cannot purport to use Ghana card to deny the right and entitlement of any person being registered. I just want to make sure she understands this provision.
But we use voter ID card. We don't have voter ID.
Please.
Can you?
She says that even when you are in possession of the voter ID card she herself relied on recently, you cannot be entitled to be registered unless you are in possession of Ghana card. That is where the crisis is emanating from.
And you're the minority, you're speaking to those issues today at your party headquarters.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So she should be careful. She should be very, very careful.
But if you could indulge me, just 1 second.
I will not indulge you. I've indulged you enough.
Friends, so
no, we are not friends. You like to heckling. Now,
wrap up.
Yes. So,
15 seconds.
So Madame Jean Mensa should simply take that instrument that she's brought back and maybe come back with an amendment to an existing one, which could be in addition to the existing voters register.
Okay.
Somebody could use a Ghana card.
Okay.
Above all this, the introduction of the exemptions bill doesn't help government to earn revenue. 2, the introduction of a property rate tax doesn't help them. Because you see, it is the assemblies who have the power under the Local Governance Act, Act 936, to enter into an agreement. So it is the assemblies that must be doing the property rate collection.
So the point, I think, is based.
And they also
as far as the minority is
this
concerned,
government.
You are totally not in support of
yes, this government introduced what we call a capping policy. They brought a law to cap IGF of entities and assemblies. The monies they are getting, they are bringing it back to the center.
I think now you are
complaining
about into different territory. But thank you. We don't have any more time.
I mean, that is.
They can't always be rebuttals, unfortunately. Please indulge me.
I agree with you.
Please indulge.
I agree with you.
Dr. Kingsley Nyarko is Member of Parliament for Kwadaso. He joined the conversation. We have Rockson-Nelson Dafeamekpor, Member of Parliament for South Dayi, also joining the conversation. Earlier, when we were talking about the Office of the Special Prosecutor, we also had lawyer Bobby Banton. On that note, we wrap on this leg of the discussion. Expect a lot more coming your way on the AM show. Do stay. I'm sorry, gentlemen. I had to go. They had been prompting me.